side, J.I. Cruz. Okay, are we there? Good morning, Chief.
Morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina. How are you
morning.
this morning?
We're doing all right.
Right on. I guess we'll just get right into it. But Chief, as a former chief of police, what do you think the Guam Police Department could be doing better in terms of combating the drugs epidemics that we currently have ongoing on our island?
Well, obviously, Chris. Well, first off, thank you. That's a very good question, and I will tell you, law enforcement is at the front end of that equation with regards to the criminal justice process. So the Guam Police Department will be at the front end to do interdiction. Now, understand that there's an entire process, and I know that the speaker talked about rehabilitation. The same with the director of Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, but specifically for the Guam Police Department, I think that a very robust interdiction process is what would help to mitigate the issue or to combat drugs on our island. As you know, when I was the chief of police, we had a strategy of policing called the Mandania Community-Oriented Policing Strategy, which had 18 initiatives altogether, one of which was the Mandania Drug Task Force. And that Drug Task Force was a multi-agency task force that came together, that included agencies from the federal government, the Department or the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Homeland Security Investigation, and we all came together to interdict drugs at the local level. So I would think that we really need to ramp that up, whether you call it the Mandania Drug Task Force or you call it whatever you want to call it. We need to do our part to step up that type of enforcement, to continue to combat drugs, to conduct those drug investigations so that we are ridding our island of that, and we're getting drugs off the street.
So what will you be focusing on public safety? What's on your platform other than
Well,
other
I'll
than
tell you,
that?
thank you, Sabrina. That's a very good question. And on my platform, there are 5 different planks that I'm looking at. And a lot of the discussion as I watched the show yesterday, obviously the economy is at the forefront of a lot of people's attention. Mine holds the same, that before we can start looking at public safety, public health, and public education, which many people consider the 3 pillars of government, we need to get our economy going again. We need to get our people working. If we are going to be able to run the government off the taxes assessed on the working class, the people out there, then we need to get them working again. We need to get that going. So obviously that would be at the forefront. I don't want to put the cart before the horse by saying we're going to do all this, but there's no money to be able to do that.
Right.
So obviously, should I get elected into office, that's one of the things that I'm taking a look at. I know that former Senator Tony Atta was just on, and he talked about that as well. We're kind of in line. Our vision is almost the same with regards to trying to stimulate our economy and get our economy going, so that those social services like public safety, which is something that's very near and dear to me, we can continue to push that. The Guam Police Department is dealing with public safety in general, not just the Guam Police Department, is dealing with a shortage of personnel. And that's something that we need to take a look at. How can we increase our numbers to be able to have a sufficient amount of police officers and civilian employees to provide public safety to our people? So those are the things that I'm taking a look at. Obviously, the economy is at the forefront, but the 3 pillars of government are very important to me: public safety, public health, and public education. And then being a veteran, a retiree out of the United States Army, and having served in the United States Marine Corps, I'm also looking to see what I can do to help our veterans, because we all know that per capita, Guam has more people who serve in our military, in the United States military, and more people who go off to theaters of combat operation, who come back and they deal with issues. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of our veterans, so that's something that I'm looking to try and effectuate to help our veterans as well. So those are the things that I'm looking at on my platform: our economy, growing our economy, public safety, public health from a behavioral health standpoint. Being the former chief, I've seen that from a public health standpoint, and talking to some of the experts in the public health arena, that maybe we can do work in that space, in that arena, to kind of help out with it in public health. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at a vulnerable population when it comes to public health. Our children, our ifamagonta, our children, imanamku, our elderly, and trying to help those folks. And then those that are disabled, trying to help those. So it's the vulnerable population that I'm looking to try and help on the public health side of the house. On the public education side of the house, in talking with some of the experts in public education and talking to some of the folks at GDOE, you know, I'm some of the conversations we had involved or circled around policy that develops the better student. And that was the buzz phrase that was used, that considers trauma-informed schools and youth outreach. And that's something that we did in the Guam Police Department under our Medania Community Policing Strategy, to try and build that so that we can build also some school safety partnerships. So for those three pillars, that's what I'm taking a look at. And then with regards to Veterans Affairs, again, you know, one of the things that our veterans are crying out for is better facilities here. And I think that what needs to kick that off is some kind of a registry, so that the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is a federal government entity, understands that we have a lot of veterans, and we have a lot of veterans that need help. So in that space, I look to introduce or support legislation that pushes that forward, that allows the GovGuam veterans, the Office of Veterans Affairs, working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is a federal government entity. So that is what my platform is built on, Chris and Sabrina, and that's what I look to take into the legislature should the people of Guam elect me into office.
Right, Chief. You know, it's obvious. Every time I get on Instagram, you're just like flooding my feed because you're practically everywhere, meeting with different people. And you had said that you were talking with experts in different agencies in different areas. But what about, you know, you heading out on the street? What are people telling you? What are they wanting to see? What kind of changes do they want from our government? And what are you going to do?
Being the former chief, Serena, a lot of people come and talk to me about public safety. I think that it's because that's what they feel comfortable about. Public safety and veteran affairs are the two big things that a lot of our people have been just coming up to me and talking to me about. What can we do? You know, the idea, the whole idea that our streets are flooded with drugs, crystal methamphetamine. You know, I get spoken to a lot. Chief, what can you, if you make it into office, what can you do to help us out with that? You know, what can you do to help out interdiction at the border, at the airport, the seaport, and the post office? What can we do to strengthen that so that we prevent the drugs from getting into the streets, so that the police officers are not spinning their wheels at 100 miles an hour trying to interdict it at that level? So those are the conversations I have. And a lot of people still call me up, Chief, who do I need to go to? Because you know what? I really feel like there's drug activity next door or across the street from me. And I would point them in the direction of the Guam Police Department and the section that they can talk to. But that's a lot of the conversation. And again, the veterans, I talk to a lot of veterans. Yeah. So that's a lot of what I'm hearing from the people. And again, it's I'm thinking that it's because of my position as the former chief of police. Right. They're looking at me to, what can I do from a public safety perspective to help our people?
I think they're looking at you not just because you're the former chief, but I know you know, and you went and you did some of these public safety town halls with Senator Jim Moylan. But before the COVID, and we'll go back to the machete attack incident, we had all these public safety meetings. We were going to do all these different things. COVID hit. Everyone was locked down. We didn't see, I mean, pretty much zero crime for, 2 months. Okay, now we're right back where we started from. So public safety, I feel like, is an issue that was really neglected by this last legislature. And I think that's why people are looking at you, is because public safety, first thing they do is dismantle the Mandania Drug Task Force. So I think people just don't feel safe. And this is something, it was common knowledge before the COVID. And, I'm not happy that we're back to normal, we're back to getting robbed, and we're back to doing drug busts and stuff. But I think that they kind of took a back burner. So what are some of the key things that we really need to do to address the rampant crime that, was bad before COVID and is only going to get worse now that we're transitioning?
These guys are bold. I mean,
Yeah.
committing crimes.
There's
in
no
broad
fear.
daylight.
There's
Yeah.
no fear. Dodge that fear.
Chris and Sabrina, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that that issue of crime is a multifaceted problem that we have to address. And in my honest and humble opinion, Chris, I really think that it goes back to that saying, it takes the whole community has to come together. In my opinion, and when I was the chief of police, that was the strategy that we employed, the whole of the community concept. And what that means is the Guam Police Department needs to get into that community and understand truly what the issues are. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, understand what the issues are and go out there and address that. If we don't make this a problem that the entire community gets involved in, then we will take baby steps going forward. One of my strategies is to be able to get the community to work together with our public safety agencies so that we can build that, because the public safety agencies themselves can't do it by themselves. Chris and Sabrina, we can put a police officer in every street corner and there still be crime. We're still going to deal with drugs. But when the community gets involved in that, and you talked about those public safety forums, those were opportunities for me to go out there and talk to the community and say, listen, we need to address this from that standpoint. It's not just the government, but it's the people out in the in the villages, in the neighborhoods. It's the nonprofit, non-government, it's the private the business community, it's the faith-based organizations all coming together. Now, whether you want to call it the Mandana Community Policing Strategy or strategy X, Y, or Z, call it whatever you want. But I think that if we come together as a community, and that's what I'm looking to do, is let's get the community involved in this, because people are going to want to come to help out. I've been to numerous town hall meetings when I was the chief of police, which was part of our strategy, and we would listen to what the issues were during those neighborhood town hall meetings, and we would understand what their concerns were. A lot of that was drugs. A lot of that was public drunkenness. A lot of that was safety out on the roads, because there was a year when we saw a very high amount of traffic fatalities. So those are the issues, but getting out into the community and making the community part of the solution, I think is going to pay dividends back to us. And that's what I'm looking to effectuate in the 36th Guam legislature, is to grow public safety, grow the Guam Police Department, customs, corrections, all the public safety agencies, and then get the community to be involved in that. Because what we saw was that there was a downtick in the amount of crime that was happening. We were taking drugs off the street on a weekly basis, 2, 3, sometimes 4 times in the week. The drug task force were going out there and they were making arrests.
Big bust.
So to me, that paid dividends back. And the reason why I know it works, because a lot of the tips, a lot of the information that we were getting were from the community, calling us and saying, we know that this person, go check this person, go check that person. And we launch a drug investigation, and that's how we were able to effectuate so many arrests.
Chief, let me get in here before we get to your closing. I just had one question, and I think it's a fair one. The people looking at you now and they're saying, hey, that's former Governor Eddie Calvo's chief of police. This guy closed the police stations. He's a hater. How do you address those criticisms of you?
Well, the closing of a police station was to mitigate overtime at the Department of Corrections. So the officers that were assigned to the Hagåtña precinct were detailed up to DOC to deal with the amount of overtime being incurred at DOC. But make no mistake, Chris, that although physically the precinct was closed, there was never a shortage of manpower to man the different beat areas in the Hagåtña precinct area. I took officers from Guam Customs and Quarantine, from the airport police, from the port police, under what was called back then Mandana 2.0, and then officers from our from GPD Special Operations Division and the Highway Patrol Division and they covered down on those beat areas.
Right.
So make no mistake, there was never a lapse in the police services being provided to the citizens in the Hagåtña precinct area. We
Okay.
just took the patrol officers and moved them up there. So although the precinct itself, the venue down in Hagåtña was closed, and we told people if they wanted to walk into the police station, they could go down to Tamuning or go up to Dededo or go down to Agat. If a call came in, those beat areas were covered. So there was never a
Chief, you got 30 seconds.
Yep.
Chief,
Closing
30
closing
seconds.
statement, Chief. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Chris and Sabrina, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on the show this morning. And to the people of Guam, I want to thank you for considering me to be a senatorial candidate. I bring to the table, and I will bring to the 36th Guam legislature 35 years of experience in the military, in the government of Guam, working from the lowest levels, being a patrol officer, being a soldier on the ground, being a Marine on the ground, to being the chief of police. So I understand the spectrum of government, and for me, the last 35 years have been service to the people. And by running for office, I look to take that to the next level by serving the people of Guam as one of your elected leaders, as a senator in the 36th Guam legislature. So I want to thank the people of Guam for that. And I humbly ask for your vote during the primary election on August 29th and the general election on November 3rd.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. There
Thank
you go. Republican candidate and former chief of police, J.I. Cruz. 948. Hey, it's the link on the breeze. 93.9. We are doing KUAM News' Decision 2020. Yes, there's an election, and you can start voting in it tomorrow. Okay, and so let's bring in our last candidate here.
He's also from the Republican Party of Guam, and you probably may have seen him because he's very outspoken and critical of the government, and rightfully so. It is Ken Leon Guerrero. I know I've seen many of his posts on Facebook and